Gary, get any coffee?
We have some.
That's the way I feel about it, you know, it's something we gotta live with. First,
Morning, Commissioner Gomez-Cordero.
vaccines become available.
Can I get a sound check from you?
Yes, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. We can hear you well. Welcome.
Thank you.
So I think we're limited to what, like 13 today? I think, yeah, just enough to get a quorum. Well, I don't think, let's see, I doubt you'll see much Orange County.
Good morning, Mr. Blend. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Chairman?
Sarah L. Baudry, good morning. How are you?
Hi, Marianne. Good morning.
Good. You sound good. Thank you.
Congratulations. Commissioner, morning, Bob.
Morning, Commissioner. How are you, Mr. Chairman?
I'm doing well, Bob. Thank you.
Hang on, Rod.
Good morning, young man. Causing trouble as always.
Well, we can shut I went over to the East Central Florida.
Yeah. Hey, Mr. Chairman and Gary, you know that I have to get over to the regional at 10:30. Yes, I have that. All right. I just want to let y'all know.
I'm gonna be.
Yeah, I'll probably walk
Okay.
over before.
Gary? What is that? How does that work with our quorum?
We need 11 for a quorum.
I'm going to stay as long as I can.
We need, we should be through action items by then.
We don't have 11 yet.
Yeah.
We don't have 11.
Quick as that.
Oh, need one more.
We have 11.
Hey, Commissioner Jainer, will you quit mumbling, please? I mean, I can't.
Commissioner Moore, how are you?
We don't have 11 yet.
We need one more. We need one more for a quorum.
I thought you were talking.
It's a big secret.
I thought you were talking Spanish. I couldn't understand.
How are you?
Okay, they got coffee.
Okay.
I just went looking for it, and it's,
You couldn't find it?
well, taste, there was no more left. Oh, yeah, that too.
Wow, where'd you get that music?
Hey, Carson, how you doing, buddy? Talk to you on the phone so often. It's a long time no see, my friend.
Well, you got a phone, you don't talk like this.
Essen, good morning. Nabil, can you hear me?
There she is.
Yes, I can. Good morning.
Okay, and we can hear you well. Thank you.
Number 11.
Okay, if we can all take our seats so we can get the meeting started.
All right.
Good luck with that, Bob.
Well, we're going to start the meeting.
Mr. Chairman, we are recording and streaming live on YouTube, so we can begin the meeting.
Thank you. This time I'd like to call the MetroPlan Orlando meeting for November 18th to order. Welcome. Today is going to be a hybrid MetroPlan Orlando meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. My name is Bob Delary, County Commissioner in Seminole County and the Chair. I'll be chairing today's meeting. We also have a team of staff members working to ensure that this hybrid meeting will hopefully run smoothly, but please be patient. As we all know, due to technology, sometimes things can be difficult. Today's meeting is the first time that this board has met in person since March. The governor's executive order has allowed us to meet virtually since April. We will be cautious in our approach and have a minimum number of board members and staff members physically present. We will need 11 voting members here to reach our quorum. I'm pleased that we have 11. We need, I've been told to be 12 people in this board meeting this morning. I asked each board member to physically in the room to please speak directly into a microphone so that those joining us virtually will hear us clearly. we'll all be wearing masks, so we all need to be providing a little extra effort to ensure that we have good audio quality. Staff has prepared the board meeting for all of us, boardroom for all of us, to be properly safe. Board members who are joining us online will participate in discussion and vote on action items. The public will be able to participate virtually as well. At this time, I'd like to ask Commissioner Vandelay to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Will we all stand, please? Commissioner?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. For those joining us online, I'd like to ask you to keep your microphones on mute unless you're being recognized to speak, or raise your hand with the feature that's going to be discussed in the video coming up. There'll be 2 public comment portions of the meeting. Members of the meeting will be asked to speak. Please join us virtually this morning by using the raised hands features. You can also attend by phone by hitting the *9 to raise your hand as requested to be recognized. Once you call, your microphone will be temporarily unmuted by staff, and you'll be asked to state your name and your contact information for the record. If you join us in person, please make public comments. We'll go directly to the MetroPlan.org/speakers card to fill out an electronic speaking card. We're also accepting comments by email or phone message before the meeting. The public will receive, therefore, the meeting, and staff will be reading the request at the meeting. And sadly, to inform everyone that one of our past board members, Orlando City Commissioner Daisy Lyman, is no longer with us. She passed away on October the 7th from complications from cancer. She served as the MetroPlan board member and the chairwoman in 2013. We have several photos here. I will tell you that she was truly a joy. I remember when she was riding that bicycle, and she was truly an amazing individual, and she will be missed. She definitely left her mark not just on Orlando, but Orange County and Central Florida. She was truly an amazing woman and a dear friend. We also have another individual that was a volunteer from Seminole County, Tony Tizio. He served on the MetroPlan Orlando Commuter Advisory Committee. He also passed away this September. He'll also be missed. The election results, I'd like to congratulate all of those who got reelected in their successful bid for their positions on November the 3rd. So congratulations. Commuter Rail meeting. Commuter Rail Commission met on October 29th. Secretary Tebow attended virtually and provided us comments and updates on the important transportation issues for the state. He also mentioned that the district received their funding estimates on Monday, October 26th, and they have until the end of December to balance their work program. Looking forward to see how they're going to do that and how it's going to affect not just Central Florida, but the state. Gary will be giving us a little more information on that later on. The district will be coordinating with MPO of local governments to work this all out. We've also learned that Sunrail was successful in the pursuit of the FRA grant. The application was supported by MetroPlan Orlando and is for $5.65 million. And is to add 1.7 miles of track between Delaney Avenue and Neptune Road in Kissimmee. We'll also be discussing what work as we focused on Phase 2 North, which would be the $34 million available to complete that project. For the Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board, I'd like to ask Commissioner Reby for her update. Commissioner?
Thank you, Chairman Delary. First of all, I know that we're going to acknowledge Mayor Alvarez, but I have had the pleasure. Mayor Alvarez was the chair of our board, and I have some big shoes to fill because his passion for what we do with TDLCB is enormous, and his heart is big. And it is with that I'm happy to present our meeting that we had. Our quarterly TDLCB meeting was held on Thursday, November 12th. This meeting was preceded by the annual LCB public hearing, which we are required by law to hold. The meeting was held in a hybrid format. We met at the Embassy Suites on Pine Street as legally required and adhered to social distancing guidelines. We received one in-person comment, one comment from a virtual attendee, and 2 written comments. 2 others, unfortunately, had completed online speaker cards, but they did not attend. Following the public meeting, we convened our November TDLCB meeting. Our action items included approval of the previous meeting minutes from the last 2 meetings and the proposed 2021 meeting calendar, the acknowledged receipt of Access Link's annual operating and annual expenditure reports, and finally, we approved the QATF recommendations to extend the appointment of Ms. Nikita Berry, our Citizens Advocate non-system user, for a 3-year period. Our presentations included an update on revisions to Orange County's Code of Pedestrian Safety, ADA needs, and site development and rights-of-way. And I want to make a point because I think everyone here could acknowledge had to do with the scooters and how that's going to affect our county as far as access for those who have to use our sidewalks and wheelchairs and so forth. So what was great was I was able to ask them to present to this board where everyone on that board really had a lot of feedback on what was happening with that. We also had a presentation on the 2045 NTP Coast Feasible Plan and a Community Transportation Coordinator update from Mr. Norm Hickling, Director of Mobility Services at Lynx. Our next meeting is February 11th, 2021, and this concludes my report.
Thank you. Next, we have the Central Florida MPO Alliance. They met on October the 9th. Commissioner Moore and Commissioner Grieve were both representing the MPO there. I don't see any of the commissioners, any of them virtually?
Commissioner Moore is on virtual.
Okay, great. Commissioner Moore, would you like to report out, please?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Delary. My report includes that the Central Florida MPO Alliance met on October 9th. And of course, we met virtually in a workshop style format because the governor's executive order had not applied to regional coalitions yet, like the Alliance. During the meeting, we received updates from FDOT Districts 1 and 5 and Florida's Turnpike Enterprise staff. The current CFMPOA officers agreed to continue through the next year. And so that is Chairman or Commissioner, as the Chairman, Commissioner Roy Tyler from Polk County TPO. The Vice Chairperson will be Commissioner Michelle Stone, and she's from the Ocala Marion TPO. And finally, the Secretary continuing for the board is Commissioner Cheryl Grieve from, of course, from our MetroPlan Orlando group. We received an update on the development of regional prioritized project list, and based on discussion and consensus, staff was directed to transmit the priority list to FDOT. I should note that we were able to come to consensus and go ahead and send the list to FDOT because the projects on the list have already been adopted by each respective MetroPlan planning organization. So when staff goes through the exercise of combining the lists, they ensure that the list is consistent with each MPO's priority list. Additionally, there were 2 presentations on the agenda. First was an update on the Regional Transportation Systems Management and Operations Program by Mr. Eric Hill. And secondly, a preview of the 2021 legislative session by MPOAC Director Carl Masika and Ryan Matthews of Peebles, Smith and Matthews. And finally, Chairman, the next Alliance meeting will be held February 12th, 2021. And with that, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next, we have the MetroPlan Organization Advisory Council. Commissioner Grieve represented the MetroPlan at this meeting. Is not able to be here today, and so we're going to forego that report. I would like to acknowledge a couple of our outgoing board members. I want to acknowledge 3 members that have served MetroPlan Orlando. These 3 members are here with us this morning. 2 of them are here this morning. Orange County Commissioner Vandelay and former, soon-to-be former Mayor Alvarez from the city of Kissimmee. Commissioner Alvarez Commissioner Vandelay served on the board since 2016. Her leadership, not just as a board member but as a chair, was doesn't go unnoticed. She was very involved with workforce transportation. It was her passion. And with her leadership, the board has helped to draw attention to this very important regional issue. I'd like to thank the Commissioner for her years of service, not just as the MetroPlan, but also as a Commissioner. We have a small plaque for her, but Commissioner, is there anything you'd like to say to address the board?
Thank you, Chairman Delary. I appreciate it. This was a particularly fun board to serve on for me. Harry Barley reminded me when I first came to the board that my father was instrumental in forming the Municipal Advisory Committee, which Mayor McDonald now chairs. And so I've got a long history, my family does, with transportation in this area and improving transportation and communication in this area. So this has been a particularly wonderful board for me to serve on, and I'm glad if I was able to add some content to the conversation in terms of workforce transportation and other items. So thank you so much.
Thank you. You'll be missed. Next, we have Mayor Alvarez, served on this board since 2016. He served as chair of the Transportation District Advisory Local Coordinating Board in 2019 and 2020. It's helped make transportation better for the disability and senior community here in Seminole County, not in Central Florida, Central Florida. Prior to serving as a board member, he was an alternate member representing Kissimmee since 2013. I'd like to thank him for his years of service. We also have a plaque. Mayor, would you like to come to the podium?
Be careful, don't give an outgoing mayor a microphone.
Please raise the microphone up, please.
Chairman, board members, first I want to thank you. It's been an honor and a privilege to serve in this board for 8 years. My first 4 years as together with my mayor of Kissimmee, Jim Swan, as an alternate, and then my last 4 years now as the mayor of Kissimmee. Transportation, I try to get away from it, and it follows me. In my younger years, I served for many years in the Department of Transportation in Miami, Florida. And when I left in '97 and came to Kissimmee, I thought that I was done with transportation, and it kind of dragged me back in. I also want to thank this board for allowing me to serve this past 2 years in the Transportation for Disadvantaged. I told the board in the last meeting that I've been in the real estate business for over 20 years, and I've served in a lot of leadership roles from the local, state to national level. And then as 8 years as a public servant, served in a lot of boards, but the Transportation Disadvantaged Board has been the most important board that I've ever served in because we are actually serving those that can't speak for themselves, those that really need our help. And I hope that MetroPlan continues to support them and continues to do the great work that I know you guys are going to continue to do. Gary, you and your staff, you guys are unbelievable here at MetroPlan. Lean on them. They will not guide you wrong. They do a great job. Virginia was a great help for me in the Transportation for Disadvantaged, and I thank her for all her hard work and dedication. And as I leave, I know that our region is in good hands. Continue to move forward. I know you guys are going to do a great job. Thank you so much. It's been a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mayor Triplett. Mayor Triplett from the city of Sanford, served on the board since 2012. He was a member of the Transportation System Committee in 2013. He also was a member of the MetroPlan Executive Committee in 2015 through 2019. Mayor Triplett helped with the advance of the Riverwalk project in the city of Sanford. The mayor could not be here today. We wanted to acknowledge his years of service and thank him and wish him well. So, next person I'd like to acknowledge is someone that's been with the MetroPlan board for many, many years. I think he started with MetroPlan before all of us got here. Steve Bechtel, the attorney that represented us, his last meeting on the board was back in June, if we remember. And he didn't have an opportunity back then to address us and I'd like to give him the microphone for a few minutes this morning to address the board, and I'd like to recognize our friend, the attorney for MetroPlan Orlando, Steve Bechtel. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. 2 minutes. Honor and a privilege to have been your general counsel for 43 years, June of 1977, when the first meeting of this body. I was the only lawyer in the room, so I got appointed. It's been an honor and a privilege, needless to say. I recently became a 50-year member of the Florida Bar, a goal I always had. And according to the Social Security Administration and the Medicare program, I'm a senior citizen. I acknowledge that. I'm in the process of retiring. I don't know if I ever will completely. I'm not moving to North Carolina. I'm staying right here. But I realize, time has come for me to step aside. So my partner, Jay Smalls, now your general counsel, Jay will do a great job. He's a lot smarter than I ever was. He's been to the meetings, as you noticed, for the past several months. So he's observed things. He's gotten to know him. He's gotten to know you. He's a great guy. You hear that, Jay? So I just want to say, as General MacArthur would say, old lawyers never die, they just fade away. So I'm fading away. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. We appreciate everything you've done and are doing for us and your law firm. I'd also like to thank that your leadership and your friendship was very instrumental all these years, way before we all got here. And thank you for helping us, not just setting up MetroPlan, but guiding us. Thank you.
Thank you very much also.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to acknowledge the Executive Director, Gary Huttman, for his announcements.
Good morning, Chairman Delary, board members, and all those attending online this morning. It's so good to see those of you who I can see and to be in the same room with you after many months. It's a good feeling to have you here. And I hope you feel safe being here. We've taken some steps to work on that. But I want to thank all the board members for helping us out and getting us a quorum present this morning for this morning's meeting. And I want to emphasize that this will be especially important next month when we ask the board to adopt the new Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So it'll be very critical next month. So as Commissioner Delary says, we do have 12 members in the boardroom this morning, and there are a number of members attending virtually online. And you're helping us to make these meetings a success. So I want to thank you for that. As Chairman Delary mentioned, for those of you online, we'll be using the raise hands feature to recognize board members during the meeting and to call on members of the public also online during the comment time. If you have joined us by the phone only without the video screen, please use the *6 to mute and unmute your line. Please use *9 to raise your virtual hand so the meeting host can see that you wish to be recognized. And then after you're recognized, please use *9 again to lower your hand. This morning, we have some alternates with us. Commissioner Constantine is here representing Seminole County in place of Commissioner Zembauer. We have Commissioner Gomez Cordero online with us this morning, and Commissioner Cordero is representing Orange County in place of Commissioner Siplin. And we also have Commissioner Fisher here with us, who has been the alternate for Mayor Alvarez from the city of Kissimmee. So thank you all three for joining us. Those in the room today that need parking validations, it's going to be done a bit differently. I'd like you to text your name and your ticket number to this number, 407-497-1536, and that is for contactless validations, and we'll get you set up to get it out of the garage safely. Just a brief report on the continuing resolution. As you know, that was passed by the House back on September 30th, and that was to ensure federal programs will continue to be funded at their current levels through December 11th. And that it kind of coincides with our next board meeting. but it includes extending the FAST Act for 1 year through September 30th of 21, and ensures mass transit account remains solvent during this time. In my discussions with the folks in Washington, particularly at the National Association of Regional Councils, there's a lot of course, discussion on this in Washington and what's going on. So I'll have an update, I'm sure, at the December 9th meeting on that. The 2020 build grants, the U.S. DOT Secretary Chow announced those awards back in September. Central Florida submitted a couple of projects, but were unsuccessful in that pursuit. Florida did receive 2 build grants. Both of them, interestingly enough, were in Hillsborough County. I had a meeting with Congresswoman Murphy's staff, Natalie Martinez, since our last meeting back on September 24th. And as I've mentioned to the board before, Natalie is from Orlando, so she feels very, very strongly that she wants to do whatever she can do to keep us informed of what's happening in Washington and see if they can help us out. And she's particularly interested in transit projects. So I indicated to her that we'll be looking at funding opportunities for the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan to advance any of the premium transit projects that may come out of it. Of course, as a region, then we would need to have the match to receive that. So it's still an expensive adventure. The National Association of Regional Councils hosted their annual executive directors meeting as a virtual event back on October 6th and 7th. The NARC staff did a good job, as always, of putting these virtual events together, but included a number of sessions over those 2 days, and primarily was focused on COVID-19 and the lessons that we're all learning and how to work a little bit differently. They hope to have next year's conference, which would be in October, to have it in Atlanta. I've met with the DOT leadership back on October 13th and then again on October 29th. We know from hearing from Secretary Perdue that coordination with the MPOs and local governments is a high priority for him. Recently he stated, in fact this was at the Commuter Rail Commission meeting, that the district received their funding allocations on that Monday of that week, October 26th. And since then we've learned that the District 5, is experiencing about a $100 million deficit in over the 5 years of fiscal 21 through 25, with 80 million of that in the current year. We've had one meeting with them to go over our priority lists for the funding that the MetroPlan board controls primarily. But we'll be meeting again with them on Tuesday, the 24th, and we hope to learn some more about possible deferrals. Our staff continues to participate in virtual outreach events and speaking engagements. I participated as a panelist for the Blind Americans Equality Day event and for the Invest Orlando magazine launch event, both of those held during the month of October. The third annual State Mobility Week was held this year from October 30th to November 6th. Of course, it was a virtual event. MetroPlan had a table in their virtual conference space, and we featured our 2045 plan safety video, provided a link to our landing page to take the virtual tour of our draft plan, and a link to the registration for the November 9th Plan Reveal webinar that we conducted. You've heard me talk in the past about the MPOAC Institute and how that's a popular event. It's going to be done. They're planning to hold it. You know, this year's events were canceled. The Institute was canceled both in Orlando and in Tampa. But they are working on an online version to have in 21. They also have done a series of videos so you can take it at your leisure. I will have more information. Typically that's in March and April. So I'll have more information on that as well at the December meeting. The Best Foot Forward conducted its fourth and final enforcement operation of the year on November 10th and 11th, just last week. Agencies from Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties were all involved. You know, a milestone for the organization has occurred during that event, and as the program has now reached 10,000 warnings and citations issued since it started back in 2012. Together, Orange County Sheriff's Office, Kissimmee, St. Cloud, and Castleberry Police Departments enforced 10 crosswalks and issued a total of 154 warnings and citations over those 2 days. We have a number of events related to the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. You'll be receiving a presentation from Cynthia Lampert later on the agenda. The Association of MPO's virtual annual conference was held from October 27th through the 29th. And I've mentioned this before, but congratulations to Alex Trauger and to Nick Lepp. They both had presentations at this national conference and provided some great exposure for MetroPlan Orlando. The first presentation they had was on scenario planning during uncertain times. And the second was on the use of big data in the transportation planning realm. The 2021 legislative session begins soon in March. Virginia and I had a discussion with Ryan Matthews the other day to begin looking at the 21 session and get a sense from our lobbyists in Tallahassee what to expect. We're going to plan on having an executive committee meeting immediately after the December 9th meeting. And you'll receive further notice of that. But we want to have some discussion of potential legislative issues and items to go forward, and then we'll bring those to the board in February. And Ryan, I believe, is planning, he's going to be in the region on December 9th. I'm not sure it will fit in his calendar to actually be here, but he's certainly available to call in. Chairman DeLauria, that completes my announcements this morning.
Thank you, Gary. This time I'd like to ask staff to call the roll. If we're going to need to turn on the people on virtually their videos as well as their microphones. Kathy?
Thanks, Gary. Commissioner DeLauria. All board members that are online, please go ahead and unmute yourselves in preparation for the roll call. And you can go on mute again after your name is called. Make sure your video is on if possible so we can confirm it's you. You'll find the unmute and video buttons on the bottom left side of your toolbar on the bottom of your screen. We'll also ask all members in the boardroom to confirm their attendance. Please say here or present when your name is called. Fisher?
Present.
Fisher? Bates?
Here.
Bonilla? DeLauria?
Here.
Demings?
Here. Technical difficulties, maybe?
Love the technology.
Yeah. I think we have it.
Well, I said earlier, we just need to be patient. Can we have assistance in freeing the video?
Just fast forward.
On her.
Why nobody's answering.
Kathy, can you hear us? Can we have a staff member contact her, please?
Jason is working.
Commissioner DeLauria, I will continue with the roll. I have the roll sheet.
I'm back on now.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Kathy.
Demings?
Here.
Dyer?
Here.
Good?
Here.
Janer?
Here.
McDonald?
Here.
Moore,
Here.
Nelson,
Here.
Nelson,
Here.
The mayors all have to do it twice.
Ortiz,
Present.
Gomez Cordero,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
I'm out of my hair.
Gary, can we have someone else continue?
Yes, I'll continue. I'm sorry, we were at Gomez Cordero.
Correct.
Here.
Yes, and, Carson Good,
Yes. Here.
Commissioner Grebe, Commissioner Janer,
Here.
Mayor McDonald,
Swallow, here.
Commissioner Moore,
Here.
Mayor Nelson, Commissioner Ortiz,
Here.
Uribe,
Uribe's here.
was that you, Kathy? Commissioner Vanderlei,
Here.
and, and Commissioner Constantine.
I'm here.
And for, okay, I think we have finished the roll. I'm sorry for the confusion there. It appears that we do have a quorum.
Mayor Woodruff here.
Mayor Woodruff, I
get that?
apologize. I apologize, yes.
Is there anyone we forgot?
I'm not sure if I'm on there or not.
Can we make sure that,
Mr.
Stephen Smith,
Smith, yes. Yes, thank you for that.
all right, is anyone else, either virtually or in the room, that has not been called that is present?
I'm
Okay,
sorry.
just like to ask staff one more time for confirmation quorum.
Yes, Commissioner, it appears that we do have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move back over to, Mr. Hutman for, confirmation of the agenda review.
Yes, Chairman Delora, I do need to draw attention to a couple of items on the agenda this morning. For consent agenda item 8E, which is the FY 2021 budget amendment, an updated fact sheet was emailed to the board members last week for your information on that item. For consent agenda item 8F, with that same email, you received a revised summary sheet that identifies the changes in the internal operating procedures. And then since preparing the agendas for this meeting, FDOT has changed the date of the online hearing and the actual public hearing to be held at the district office. Your agendas indicates the week-long online hearing would be December 7th through the 11th, and that has been changed to January 11th through the 15th. And the in-person public hearing at the district office is listed on your agendas as December 10th, and that has been changed to January 14th, again at the district office. So with those changes, Chairman Valari, we're ready to move forward.
Any questions for the changes that Mr. Hutman announced to us?
Motion for approval, Janer. Second, Uribe.
Any questions? All in favor of the changes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign? Motion passes. I hear no dissents, so it passes. We'll now move on to committee reports. First committee report we have is Municipal Advisory Committee. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everybody. It is good to see everybody. The Municipal Advisory Committee met November 5th, 2020 in a virtual workshop format. Items presented for review and discussion included our September 3rd meeting minutes, the FDOT amendment to fiscal year 2020, 2021 through 2024-25 TIP, and also the 2021 proposed board and committee meeting schedule. And we received 3 presentations, all relating to the 2045 MTP. Now, these included a status update on public participation, a preview of the cost feasible plan, and a preview of the congestion management process. Our next meeting is scheduled for December 3rd, and just a thought, throw out there a fabulous, great job to Alex and Nick and the crew with the 2045 plan. So that concludes my report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions for the Municipal Advisory Committee? Thank you. This time, move on to the Community Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Board. At its October 28th virtual meeting, the Community Advisory Committee recommended approval of a TIP amendment related to the State Road 436 resurfacing and the Longwood South Pedestrian Corridor, as well as the Orange County Railroad crossing projects. Committee members also recommended approval of the 2021 board and committee calendar, acknowledging that our meeting formats may need to adjust during the coming year as they did this year. CAC members heard fabulous updates on the 2045 MTP cost feasible plan, MTP public participation, and the 2045 congestion management process from Cynthia, Alex, and Laura. Thank you so much. Our next CAC meeting will be the first in the virtual workshop format and will be held on December 2nd.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for the Community Advisory Committee? Any questions? Thank you very much. Hearing none, we'll move on to the Technical Advisory Committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The Technical Advisory Committee has met on October 23rd. We recommended approval of 2 items. The first one is the amendment to the TIP requested by FDOT. And the second approved item was the 2021 Technical Advisory Committee meeting schedule for the year coming up. We've also heard 3 presentations. The first was on the 2045 MTP public outreach update. The second presentation was on the MTP cost feasible plan. And the final presentation was on the MTP congestion management process. This concludes my report, Mr. Chairman. I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Any questions for the Technical Advisory Committee? Any questions? Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate your help. This time, move on to the Transportation System Management and Operation Committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. The TSMO committee met on October the 23rd of 2020. We approved our August 28th TSMO meetings. We also approved staff's request that the fiscal year 2020-21 through 2024-25 TIP be amended to replace the state funds with local funds for the design of State Road 436 resurfacing project and replace federal SU funds with local funds for the design of the Longwood South Pedestrian Corridor project. 3 new railroad crossing safety projects in Orange County are also being added. We approved the 2021 board and committee meeting schedule, but changed the May 2021 TSMO meeting date to Friday, May 21st to avoid conflict with the Memorial Day holiday. We had a presentation by Mr. Eric Hill of MetroPlan Orlando on the status of the I-4 regional TSMO program. MetroPlan Orlando is working with the MPOs and TPOs to advance planning for TSMO in Central Florida. Mr. Hill also facilitated a discussion on workforce development initiative to address some of the technical skills and the human resource needs in the transportation industry. Staff will present a proposal on a task force at a future TSMO meeting. This concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions for the Transportation System Management Operation Committee? Any questions? Thank you very much. We'll now move on to public comments for action items only. We're going to go action items for public hearing on these action items. Anyone like to speak should fill out the electronic speaker card. Do we have any members in the public that wish to speak physically here? Do we have anyone? Gary?
I don't believe we have any cards.
Electronically or virtually, just want to make sure if we have anyone virtually. If so, please raise your hand. The function should be found on your screen, or please press the star 9 on your keypad. And I'd like to see if we have anyone in the virtual room. Staff, do we have anybody in the virtual room?
Commissioner Delary, it doesn't appear, there's nobody that has their hand raised at the moment. Yeah, there's nobody raising their hand.
Okay, great. Thank you. We'll now move on to consent agenda items that we have. We all have in our packet on the consent agenda. Do we have direction from the board?
Motion to approve. Well,
Second. Okay, who made the motion?
motion, Janer.
Janer. Who seconded the motion? Okay, we can't see lips moving.
Oh, yeah. Janer and McDonald in that order.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes with no dissenting votes. We'll now move on to action items for approval for the FDOT amendment to the 2020/21 and 2024 to 25 TIP. We'll hear from staff at this time.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. This amendment includes 5 projects. 2 of those are in Seminole County. One of these replaces state funds with local funds for the design of a resurfacing project on State Road 436 in Altamont Springs. And then the other replaces federal SU funds with local funds for the design of the Longwood South Pedestrian Corridor. And then we have 3 new railroad crossing safety projects that are being added in South Orange County. And you all have the information on this in tab 2 in your agenda packets. So unless there's any questions, we're asking for your approval of the amendments.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Do we have any virtual hands raised? I'd like to ask staff, do we have anyone raising their virtual hands?
Not at this time.
Okay. This time, do we have a motion from the board?
So moved, Uribe.
Do we have a second?
Second.
McDonald.
Sorry.
Questions on the motion? This will be a roll call vote. We ask staff to call the roll.
Yes, Chairman Delary, if our members could unmute at this time and be prepared for the roll call. Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Commissioner Arrington? I'm present. Mayor Bates?
Yes.
Commissioner Delary?
Aye. Yes.
Mayor Demings?
Yes.
Mayor Dyer?
Yes.
Mr. Good?
Yes.
Commissioner Janer?
Yes.
Mayor McDonald?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Nelson?
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz?
Aye.
Commissioner Gomez Cordero?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mayor Woodruff?
Yeah.
Commissioner Uribe?
Yes.
Commissioner Vanderlei?
Yes.
And Commissioner Constantine?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, it appears that the vote is unanimous.
Thank you. This time we'll go on for the items on the agenda, which is item 10, which is informational items for acknowledgement. Is there a motion to accept for acknowledgement?
So moved, Vanderlei.
Second, Constantine.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Hearing none from the board, and any virtual hands raised?
There are no hands raised, Commissioner
We'll call the
Delary.
question. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign? Opposed, like sign. Hearing no dissenters, the motion passes unanimously. This time move on to the other business and presentations. First item we have is the 2045 MPT status. We'll hear from staff.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being
Good
with
morning.
us today. I can't see all of you in the boardroom, but I trust that you are all smiling under those masks. So thanks for joining us for our first hybrid meeting. The last time I was with you, I presented how we had to kind of change our whole approach to outreach to the long-range transportation plan once the pandemic hit, and we had a lot of success with our digital strategy. So today I'm going to talk about how we've taken and listened to the public input that we've received, and then how we've actually changed the plan in response to that input. So next slide, please. First, I'll start off with a reminder of our timeline. We actually started this process of creating our 2045 plan about a year and a half ago. Active outreach started last November. And so as you can see, moving down the timeline there, we're almost at the very end. So right now we're in the public comment period on the draft 2045 plan. And today you're going to hear a lot about that from the next couple of speakers. Alex will be reviewing the cost feasible plan, and Lara will be going over the congestion management process with you. And so at your next meeting, this is going to be a really big deal for us because you will be considering the 2045 plan on your action item list at the December 9th meeting. So as Gary mentioned, your presence next month is really important to us. Next slide, please. So I'll start off by sharing some key outreach results. We began the process by creating a public participation plan, and this laid out a lot of different objectives that we wanted to meet when it came to community outreach for the long range plan. Of course, transportation planning is such a complex process that one thing we always want to accomplish is helping to educate people about how planning works. We want them to know that it actually exists. Believe it or not, sometimes we go out there and people are surprised to learn that there's an organization devoted to transportation planning in the region. So the first number you see here is we've had over 10,000 significant interactions with members of the Central Florida community. And the way we define that is basically anytime we had a teachable moment with someone, either we had a conversation with them at an event, they attended one of our programs, fill out one of our surveys, or perhaps they spent some time watching our videos online or on our website, going over our documents that we posted there. So we had a lot of opportunities to be able to raise awareness of transportation planning throughout this MTP process. When it comes to folks who gave direct input into the plan, we had at least 1,800 up to this point, and that has gone up the past couple of months as this comment period has been open on the draft plan. And of course, you told us that youth outreach is really important to you. And this is why you've set outreach to younger generations as a priority area. So this is something that we focused on in outreach for this particular plan. If you'll recall, we created a special youth activity book for our younger audiences because, you know, they will be adults and ruling the world when this 2045 plan comes to life. And so we reached nearly 1,000 children with that activity book. So they had a chance to learn more about the 2045 plan. And then finally, we are very active in the digital space. So social media is an important way that we disseminate information, and we've had a great number of social media impressions. In other words, the number of times that people have viewed our 2045 plan messages. So I'm happy to report that we are on track to reach all those objectives that we set for ourselves in the public participation plan. We've got all this in a report for you if you want details on the strategies that we used to reach those objectives, and I'll show you where to find that report in just a moment. Next slide, please. So last month I went into quite a bit of detail about some of the public input that we received, but I'll just remind you of some of the common themes. So we found that folks really expect a lot out of our transportation system. And so they believe that all the 5 goals that we set for the 2045 plan, we found that Central Floridians told us they think all those things are basically equally important. When we looked at our pre-pandemic results versus post-pandemic, what we were hearing from our surveys, We did find a little bit of a shift. So before the pandemic, access and connectivity was the #1 goal that was coming in. But then after the pandemic, investment and economy, closely followed by health and environment, were the top goals for the transportation system, which makes a lot of sense considering the environment that we're dealing with now. And when we asked folks about their top desired changes to the transportation system, we heard very loud and clear throughout the whole process 3 things. So one was the use of smart signals and technology to improve congestion. Folks were very interested in that. And the other top 2 had to do with our transit system. So people wanted to see more frequent transit that goes to more places. And then they also wanted to see those first and last mile connections improved. So we know those often take place through biking and walking, micromobility, those types of options for people to make short trips from their homes to the transit system or on to their final destinations. So people are interested in seeing improvements to that as well. Next slide, please. So we took all this input and we actually used it to make some very important decisions on the technical side of the 2045 plan. And I wanted to share some examples with you today. And we really feel that this plan, more than any of the previous plans that we've done in past years, this one really takes that public input into account and uses it to drive these important decisions in the plan. So wanted to take this opportunity to thank you all. Not only have you listened to the input that we've brought back to you from the public, but you've also made a lot of suggestions along the way to help us. If you'll remember at the very beginning of the plan, we asked you for suggestions on groups to reach out to, and we were able to reach out to a lot of those groups. So we thank you for the help that you've given us. So how did we use public input? Well, the first area is weighting of performance measures. As you've heard in previous presentations, we used very specific performance measures to score projects in this plan. And our original intent was actually to weight some of these performance measures more than others. So once we heard that the public really considered all the goal areas to be pretty much equally important, we decided not to weigh those performance measures. So we didn't move forward with our original plan there. Second area is funding allocations. We actually increased the money set aside for programs that support the desired changes that the public wants to see. And you'll hear more about those specific funding programs next from Alex once he gives you his presentation. Scenario planning strategies. This is the first time that we've used scenario planning in our long-range planning process. And what we heard was that you thought that we should plan not only for very positive, rosy futures, but also for futures that perhaps may not be so positive, may not be so high growth as we're usually used to. So we created a brand new scenario based on the feedback that we received from our committees, our board, and the public on that. And we also used input to help refine some of those strategies as well. And lastly, adjusting technical methodology. We have received some great suggestions throughout the process, which have made us some little tweaks here and there to the way that we have evaluated things on the technical side. So we have listened and we've really taken all that into account. Next slide, please. So where can you find all this information? This is the URL, metroplanorlando.org/2045 draft plan. And this is where you can take a virtual tour of our draft 2045 plan. You'll find all the documents here, including the cost feasible plan PDF, which is the plan document. There's information on how to comment. There is a video of a webinar that we had on November 9th. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. You'll also find excerpts of all the project lists and the public participation report on this page. So we encourage you to please, if you get the opportunity, please share this URL either today or tomorrow with your constituents, because the deadline for public comment is on Friday. So we're coming up to the end of that period. Next slide. And speaking of public comment, so we opened the public comment period on October 16th. So we've been open for a month already. And as I mentioned, Friday is the deadline. There are lots of options for how people can comment. So they can go to this URL. There's a comment form on there that they can fill out. They can send an email to mtp@metroplanorlando.org, or they can leave a message on a public comment line that we have set up. We also took live public comments during our webinar. And next month at your meeting, we will give you a thorough review and summarize all those comments, including the major topics that we heard about. Next slide. So we had a great webinar on November 9th for the public. We had about 100 attendees, and about 42% of those were return participants. So this was great to see that people were really hanging out with us throughout the whole process of creating the plan. So, you know, they had given us input early on, and now they wanted to see what the final product was. So we were glad to see that. The video recording has already been viewed many times. I think last time I checked, we were at 171 and rising. So the information is out there for folks to view, and we're glad that people are taking advantage of that. One of the questions that we asked that I thought you all might be interested in hearing the answer to. So after we hit all the highlights of the 2045 plan, we talked about the amount of unfunded needs that we have, and you'll hear more about that in just a moment. But then we asked, okay, if money fell out of the sky tomorrow for this plan, how would you want us to spend it? And so you see all the answers here. Actually, we received a pretty good variety, but the top answer was more bus and rail. So people, as they have been all along, are very interested in seeing the transit system improved. And again, you see those smart signals as well right up there up top. We're glad to see safety projects also received quite a bit of support, as well as some of the bicycle and pedestrian options. Next slide. So that's all I have for you today. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have about outreach.
Thank you, Cynthia. Any questions from the board? Do we have any virtual hands raised? I'd like to ask staff, do we have any virtual hands that are raised? Do we have any virtual hands raised from the public?
Do not, Mr. Chairman, have any virtual hands raised at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to the next item, which is the 2045 MPT preview and cost feasibility plan. Hear from staff.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Delary, members of the board. Today I'll be talking again about the 2045 plan, but today specifically about our cost feasible element, which is a key requirement of the federal and state planning process. Us identifying needs, but at the end of the day, at the end of the planning process, identifying a prioritized list of affordable projects. So I'm going to start. Advance the slide. Just give me 1 second. So we kicked off the plan about 2 years ago, working with DOT and our partners, but another early, and critical stage of the planning process was visioning, understanding what's most important, both in goals and objectives. As Cynthia mentioned, we engaged the public on these topics, and sought their feedback on what's most important. And as she said, they all pretty close align with what's most important pre and post pandemic. Those goals and objectives and that kind of end in mind, that vision really led our planning process. We've had many presentations this year about the different methods and approaches we've taken, both in scenario planning, but also in kind of multimodal needs and opportunity identification, with really that goal of serving everyone, those diverse traveler needs and desires, really for all ages and abilities. That's encapsulated in our goals and objectives, and was really used as a lens, for all of our assessment and investment stages of the plan, which I'll talk about today. So again, the long-range plan, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, has to be cost feasible. That is a key requirement. So this is where the money starts coming into play. And as we look at the years 2026 through 2045, that's the 20-year period outside of our existing 5-year work program, our transportation improvement program. So that's really the funds and projects that we're really going to be talking about today. And as we look at a the future for this plan, we're looking at about a $25.7 billion plan, and about 50% of that is federally and state and locally funded projects. The other 50% toll funded, serious investment in our region in Florida in general as it relates to toll facilities. So, we acknowledge the importance of those facilities, that system as it helps us move around and through the region. But the focus of our presentation today, and really this long range plan, is that of those federal and state funds, while also considering local investment in the transportation system. So as we take a snapshot of these local or federal, state, and local funds, 12.82 billion, like I said before. As you look at this chart here, you'll see these 8 categories. We're still investing in I-4, which I'll talk about in a moment. But you'll see a couple, mode-specific categories and investments, and then 2 kind of more generic labels, the state roads and local facilities. And what I wanted to call attention to is that these 2 project lists, the state roads, are multimodal projects. So you're going to have widening projects in some cases, complete streets and intersection improvements, sidewalk and trail shared use paths along the state highway system, and similarly for the local road. So don't let those chart labels mislead you. We really do have a multimodal federal, state, and local funding mix here. You'll see some of the bus, bike ped, complete streets, and TSMO policies. Those are falling in line with our board's, your policy on spending our urbanized area funds on what we call our SU transportation and TALU transportation funds. So diving a little bit deeper into that, we followed your existing policy, but as part of the planning process, what we heard from the public and in the scenario planning process gave us some insights into other things that we're considering as part of this plan to kind of get us to accomplish those goals and objectives. On the technology front, we're going to continue our investment in retiming signals. That's something that we've done for years. We're going to continue that, and we're ingraining that here in our long-range plan. We're also identifying, we've identified $250,000 a year, $5 million over the life of the plan for autonomous, connected, electric and shared vehicle demonstration projects. So we're going to be working with your staffs as part of our systems management and operation advisory committee later next year, to start forming those lists, identify those projects, and start prioritizing them near term. As it relates to active transportation, bicycle, pedestrians, those walking and cycling, we've identified $1 million a year for school mobility projects. Similarly, we've allocated $1 million a year to fill critical sidewalk gaps. These are new programs in our MTP, something we're proud of, and these are projects and funds that you wouldn't have traditionally seen in previous plans. Similarly, with support to our local government partners, a couple new programs in the MTP here, $1 million a year, helping MetroPlan Orlando, serve and assist our local partners in solving and overcoming some of their transportation challenges through studies and other activities. And we're also we've identified up to about $300 million for local road widening projects. So these are federal and state funds that would traditionally be spent on the state highway system that we're opening up to our local government partners for local road widening projects on those highly congested, unreliable facilities on the local network. And again, following our board, your policy for spending district dedicated revenue, $90 million through 26 through 45 of the plan for premium transit services. But as we start developing the plan, putting together the cost feasible plan, there are a couple ground rules, and I think they're important to acknowledge in these uncertain times. First and foremost, we're going to finish what we've started. That's a key element of the planning process. We're looking outward, but we have to focus on current conditions. So we're looking at our transportation improvement program and those funded projects. So as our funding shortfalls, as we may see funding shortfalls in the coming months, as the dust settles on that topic, we'll come back and ensure those projects are funded first, and of course modify the plan as necessary. As I mentioned, relating to the second bullet on my previous slides, where flexible within this plan, we are using our federal funds to really accomplish our goals and objectives, spending for complete streets, improved systems management, operation, transit, and bike and ped facilities. So, we're really aligning funds with what we're saying is most important. Another ground rule and acknowledgement as part of the planning process is how we consider toll-funded projects and locally funded projects in the planning process. Those are adopted by reference, as you know, a little outside the governance of this agency, but they're included in the plan to show the full transportation picture and to understand the full level of transportation investment. So those are a couple ground rules, but like I mentioned before, it all goes back to cost feasibility, and that's really the final and most important ground rule. What can we afford? As FDOT and the Federal Highway Administration review and certify our documents, this is a key question as we move forward. So what I'm going to do is run you through a couple of our project lists, about 8 of our project lists briefly, and then I'll guide you for a deeper review into the documents. But as it relates to the interstate highway system and the strategic intermodal system, we have about $4.4 billion worth of investment for I-4. This includes, what we know as the I-4 Ultimate from Kirkland to 434, but based on existing forecasts, the kind of beyond the Ultimate, the northern and southern or eastern and western segments of I-4 are also cost feasible for their ultimate configurations. These funds are also, and priorities on this list, focus on our region's need for improved truck parking capacity. So that's acknowledged and would be spent within this funding category. The large funding category, I mentioned it before, on our state highway system. So these are projects, multimodal projects that are on the state highway system. So again, the projects range from widening projects to complete streets, multimodal projects, but also projects that improve reliability and improve safety along and at intersections. About $2.6 billion worth of investment on the state highway system. Again, a couple of examples here: John Young Parkway, 535 in Orange County, and the 434 Franklin in the Seminole County area. But all of those projects are on Table 9. And again, each of those projects has to be on the state highway system to be eligible for that category. So off the state highway system, as I mentioned earlier, we're opening up about $300 million in those state and federal funds for off state highway system or local widening projects. So a new category helping our partners with the big lift of construction and spending for this. So again, those projects are on Table 10 and the cost feasible list. But as you can see here, these are a couple of highlights, but there's about 15 or 20 other cost feasible projects that we're able to fund in this local widening list. Complete streets, following through with our board's existing policy for urbanized area funds, we're allocating $200 million to complete streets projects off the state highway system. So these are complete streets and other type of context sensitive improvements. A couple examples from across the region, some may be more familiar than others, but each of these projects are on Table 12 of the cost feasible plan. Next list is our technology, or what we call our Transportation Systems Management and Operations, or TSMO. These also include what we call ITS, Intelligent Transportation System projects. So this is using technology to improve efficiency, safety, overall mobility for all users. As you can see, a lot of different project types, from our demonstration program, to our annual retiming. But this also is our board's allocation of the 21% of our urbanized area funds. So these are some, project highlights, but each of those TSMO or ITS projects that are federally funded are located on Table 11. Next category is pedestrian, bicycle, trail. So this is our active transportation category, federally funded, very bike and ped focused projects. I think before I jump into this, it's important to note, as I mentioned before, this list is bike and ped focused, 108 million, but some of our previous lists, like the complete streets list, as well as our multimodal list on the state highway system, includes a lot of investment and consideration for bicycle and pedestrians, as we develop and build those future transportation facilities. So, with that said, again, 108 million for federal funds for ped bike and trails. A couple highlights here, we're in cost feasibility relating to Shingle Creek. We were funding some segments, majority of the segments in Orange and Osceola counties. You'll see our critical gap program in that budget allocation table, as well as our school mobility program. Those are found in table 13 of the cost feasible plan. Regional transit, the kind of the critical element, kind of final element of our plan. $2.45 billion, almost $2.5 billion in federal, state, and local investment for regional transit service rather. Our needs assessment looked at improving and enhancing fixed route service, identifying premium corridors, and also making some additional commuter rail connections. I talked about the importance of operations infrastructure and the links operation centers. So as we look at cost feasibility and what projects we can afford as it relates to transit capital and services, the 2045 plan has identified links existing and Sunrail existing service as cost feasible. This does consider inflation into the future as it relates to the cost in labor. But we're also able to afford, because we have available capital funds, we're able to the new Southern and Northern Operations Center for Links bus service, so that again, help provide improve regional efficiency, cut down on those deadhead miles, and also with our capital funds that we're spending for transit, we'll be expanding Sunrail stations, Meadowwoods, Tupperware, and Point Siena. And MetroPlan Orlando is going to be exploring that, through a study. We believe next year we'll be able to kick that off to look at feasibility and concept development. And again, the final kind of key cost feasible project is we do have the capital funds necessary to fund the construction phase of Sunrail Phase 3, so Sunrail to the airport. Although for every transit project, there's a capital and a continuing operations and maintenance cost and annual cost. And because we do not have that project is considered what we call partially funded. So capital's there, but as Gary mentioned earlier in the presentation, there is that local operating match which is required for that level of transit service. That information is found on tables 14 and 15 of the cost feasible plan. So I know I covered a lot of ground, I always do, but as we look at this plan, we're funding a lot. Like I said, almost $13 billion when you look at federal, state, local, almost $25 billion, if not more, as you look at, we also include toll funds, but we also have some serious unfunded needs, and that's what's shown on this chart. After we've gone through our budget allocation, prioritized projects, and overlaid available funding resources, these are the remaining unfunded project needs, about $17 billion, 16.5 to be pretty specific. A lot of that, relates to kind of local projects as well as transit projects because of the need for the local commitment. But again, $16.5 billion of unfunded need. Also important to note, and I should have mentioned this earlier, all of our funding forecasts are based on existing revenue sources that are currently levied. So that as you're looking at unfunded need, the level of unfunded needs, and maybe some other funding sources that you may be considering in the future, many of those sources would be able to accomplish and address the unfunded priorities that we have as part of this plan. But based on state and federal guidelines, we have to adopt this plan considering existing levied funding sources. So that's really all I have today, Mr. Chairman. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. As Cynthia mentioned, a couple ways to still participate with us. Our public comment period, does end, on the 20th. So a couple ways to engage there. We've been coordinating with your staffs. Our agency comment period ended on the 13th, and we've been working through updating those lists based on the feedback we've received from our local agency partners. So we've been updating project limits and descriptions. And when I come back to you at your December 9th meeting, and when we report back to our advisory committees in the next couple weeks, we'll be talking about those changes from scribbler error to modifications based on funding and project limits. So with that, we happy to answer any questions. If not, appreciate your time, and I look forward to our December meeting together.
Thank you, Alex. Any questions from the board? See none here physically. Is there anyone raising a hand virtually? I'd like to ask staff.
It appears there's nobody with any virtual raised hands.
Okay. Thank you. We'll now move on to the next item, which is the 2045 MPT preview of the congestion management process, CMP.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Delary. Good morning, board members and members in the audience. So I'm going to wrap up the MTP-related presentations this morning with our final update on the congestion management process we've been working on for much of the year. This CMP will be up for approval along with the MTP at your December 9th board meeting. Next slide, please. So today's presentation is going to focus on the final 4 actions in the 8-action process model from FHWA that we've been using to help us develop the CMP this year. The second half of the process is where we have analyzed the existing systems to determine where there are issues that are affecting congestion. We've identified potential strategies for mitigating these issues, and then also recommended the strategies that should be considered for implementation to meet our congestion management goals that we're now all familiar with. Next slide, please. Speaking of those goals, today I'm briefly going to review the types of analysis that were performed for each of our goal areas shown here and what the findings were, and then I'm going to present the strategies that are recommended as a part of our 2045 CMP update for improving recurring and non-recurring congestion in our region. Over 30 performance measures were identified in support of this congestion management exercise, which I presented on the last time you saw me, and a handful were analyzed to help us determine where there are existing issues that are either causes of congestion or that are impacted by congestion, and I'll review these briefly. Next slide, please. So starting with our safety and security goal area, we all know that safety continues to play a role in congestion levels throughout our region. So we did some high-level analysis as a part of the CMP to reveal where in the region is experiencing the most fatal and severe crashes. We wanted to get a feel for where there were issues that could impact non-recurring congestion and what types of roadways are really experiencing these issues. So this slide in particular shows the top 25 segments for fatality crashes, and then also the top 25 segments for fatality plus severe injury crashes. So the top fatality crashes are shown in that blue. And what we found were, no surprise really, the top 25 segments are primarily our interstates and rural principal arterials. For that fatality plus severe injury category, which is shown sort of in the darker green, we found that most of the segments that were in that top 25 were either minor arterials or principal arterials, and then that lighter green is just where those segments overlap. Next slide, please. So in addition to looking at total crashes by number, we also took a look at our top segments for our high crash rates. And so you can see in the blue, the total, the top 25 segments rather, for crash rates for fatal and severe injuries. And then the darker green shows the top 25 segments for total crashes for crash rate. And really for both of those different types, the top segments were primarily local urban roadways and major collectors. Next slide, please. Moving on to our reliability and performance goal area, we focused here on identifying the areas in the region with unreliable travel times. And so we're showing sort of a heat map here where the most unreliable areas in the region are shown in the darker pink. Again, no surprises here. The most unreliable areas are generally occurring near our downtowns, our entertainment districts, and some of our major employment areas. Next slide, please. So for our access and connectivity goal area, we did sort of 3 evaluations. We looked at auto and transit access to some of our key regional destinations, some activity centers, and then also we took a look at bicycle and pedestrian access to essential services. So this slide is showing our auto and travel access to some key regional destinations, including our major theme parks, the 2 airports, as well as the convention center, specifically looking at a 20-minute auto or transit trip. And it's a really sort of busy graphic, but really the main takeaway here is that convenient transit access to these really key regional destinations is very limited. The areas of the region that are within our 20-minute transit travel shed are indicated by the boxes. Next slide, please. We also took a look at auto and transit access to some activity centers, and the list of activity centers that was considered is shown in the bottom right of the slide. So the travel shed coverage is more expansive just due to the greater number of activity centers and the geographic disbursement of those activity centers. But the story is really very similar, with transit options, which are again delineated using the boxes, being much more limited than auto options. Next slide, please. And then our final evaluation within our access and connectivity goal area was bicycle and pedestrian access to essential services. Those essential services again include grocery stores, market and convenience stores, restaurants, public parks, government buildings, schools, and healthcare. So what we found was about 24% of the population within the region has access to a 10-minute bicycle ride or walk to these essential services. And then you can see graphically in the yellow what geographic coverage is that has that 10-minute bicycle ride or walk access. So you can see we have some work to do there to improve bicycle and pedestrian access to these really essential services. Next slide, please. For our health and environment goal area, the analysis reviewed the system-wide air quality index, or the AQI. The AQI is an index for reporting daily air quality and uses a scale that runs from 0 to 500, which you can see that scale sort of in the bottom right of the slide. So the higher the AQI value, the greater the level of air pollution and the greater the health concern. As noted here, an AQI under 100 denotes good to moderate air quality with little potential to affect public health, while an AQI over 300 represents hazardous air quality. Sort of as a point of reference, the AQI in areas of California and out west that have recently been ravaged by fires, the AQI was frequently above 300. Here in Florida, we rarely have an AQI greater than 100, and we've never officially recorded a value greater than 200. An AQI value of 100 generally corresponds to a national air quality standard for a pollutant, which is the level that the US EPA sets to protect public health. Here in our region specifically, over the analysis period, which was from 2015 to 2019, the AQI never went above 100 and our average hovered around 50. So we're in good shape from an air quality index standpoint. Next slide, please. And then our final goal area, which is investment in economy, what we looked at was identifying the reliability of regional visitor emphasis corridors. We defined those visitor emphasis corridors as those carrying 60% or greater visitor traffic based on FDOT's visitor study that was completed last year. Of the visitor emphasis corridors, there are scatterings of unreliable segments that are clustered around those key regional destinations that I mentioned earlier. They're shown here in pink. The exact causes of the congestion are not known, but contributing factors are most likely due to oversaturated conditions and points of conflict like high intersection and driveway densities. Next slide, please. So that wraps up sort of the analysis that we did as a part of the CMP, and now I'm going to turn to talking about the recommended strategies that we've come up with within the CMP. And they're divided into 3 types of strategies that can be employed to reduce our recurring and or non-recurring congestion. And in doing so, we feel make a positive progress towards each of the performance measures and targets and advance the goals of the CMP and of the region. So our 3 buckets that we've identified are strategies that can improve safety conditions, strategies that can optimize our system capacity, and then strategies that can promote a mode shift away from single occupant vehicles. So starting here with some strategies that can improve safety conditions, we really focused on those strategies that are aimed at improving safety conditions and focus on reducing the occurrence or severity of crashes so that we can decrease the incidence of non-recurring congestion in the region. So some of the recommendations that we've made include expanding notification systems to utilize variable messaging signs, mobile applications, and connected vehicle technology to implement queue warning systems, dynamic detours, and similar after an incident. We're recommending expanding the use of integrated corridor management to redirect traffic for major incidents and events. That's been a really successful strategy of late. Recommending advancing the role of predictive analytics and assisting with incident management. And just a shout out for something that MetroPlan is doing right now. We are partnering with UCF and FDOT District 5 to do a pilot of a predictive safety analytic tool under an FHWA grant that we won recently. That tool aims at enabling faster crash identification and responses by using predictive information and visualization of current traffic conditions through access to CCTV cameras. The application is expected to improve road safety and reduce congestion by reducing the duration and impact of crashes, and thereby reduce the number and impact of secondary crashes. So we're really excited about that. And then also within this bucket, we are recommending implementing some of the countermeasures that were identified in the bicycle and pedestrian safety action plans completed by MetroPlan last year. It was phase 1. And these countermeasures were aimed at reducing bike and pedestrian crashes and included installing better lighting or bicycle lanes where appropriate, evaluating some speed reductions and nighttime speed reductions, and also potentially developing a driver and cyclist educational campaign. Next slide, please. So for our bucket of strategies that are aimed at optimizing system capacity, on the freeway management side, we're recommending ramp metering, which is actually already planned to be a feature on I-4 once the managed lanes are operational. Further consideration of additional managed lanes where appropriate on the system, with a caveat here that managed doesn't necessarily mean tolled. It can also include things like truck-only lanes, BRT lanes, reversible lanes, express lanes, and similar. And then also interchange improvements or auxiliary lanes where necessary to reduce bottlenecks. For arterials, we're recommending continuing our very successful signal retiming program that we've had over the last 14 plus years, expanding the actively monitored system within the region so we can continue to use technology to improve the flow of vehicles, traffic, and improve safety. And then also intersection improvements, again, to improve operations or to address bottlenecks. Next slide, please. Some additional strategies under this optimized system capacity bucket include freight management, where we're recommending increasing the reliability of key truck routes and improving connectivity to our major freight terminals, along with developing some curb management standards to address congestion related to vehicles making deliveries. I know Orange County is already working on this. We know that connected and automated vehicles have the potential to improve traffic flow. So in our automated, connected, electric, and shared, or ACES bucket, we are recommending that several of the recommendations from our CAV readiness study that you approved over the summer be prioritized so that the region can begin to benefit from any safety or operational efficiencies that these vehicles may offer as the numbers of these vehicles increase on our roadways. As Alex mentioned, to support this set of strategies, there's a new sort of funding program that's identified in the 2045 MTP to support ACES demonstration projects. So we're really excited about that. And then finally, we're recommending that the region harness the power of big data to improve how we're processing data to recognize patterns and needs, and also to emphasize traveler information systems to share information about delays, incidents, weather, travel times, etc. The idea here being that more informed drivers are going to result in a more efficiently utilized roadway capacity. Next slide, please. And so our final bucket are those strategies that will promote making a mode shift from single occupant vehicles. The idea here being that if we can make other modes more efficient, more convenient, or more safe, we can reduce the number of cars on the road. So some of the strategies in this bucket include developing some travel demand management, or TDM, specific plans related to telecommuting and first mile, last mile options, building more awareness and motivation around TDM strategies like active transportation management, adapting our roadways to be more accommodating of all users, including advancing complete streets concepts. And Alex mentioned there's a new bucket of funding for those. Improving our local street connectivity and the accessibility on foot or bike to our essential services. And finally, expanding the capacity and connectivity of our public transportation options. This can include things like supporting Lynx and Sunrail in their efforts to optimize route structure, hours, and frequency so their services provide better access to jobs and services. But it can also include considering technology solutions to improve access and convenience to Lynx, including things like expanding trip planning capabilities and making them more user-friendly, as well as making a move towards more of a mobility as a service model with a single account system that's available across modes. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide, and then this is just my opportunity to remind you that the CMP is a living document, and there will be ongoing monitoring activities between now and our next update, or next major update, I should say, in 5 years. So every 6 months, we're going to be compiling all available new data to update our performance scorecards and assess the progress that we're making towards the targets that we've set. We'll be providing a report on those findings to the board and your committees every 6 months, either through a presentation or a memo. And then annually, we'll be doing an annual report in concert with our Tracking the Trends effort. And in that report, we'll also be providing some information about how we're moving towards our targets, and also some sort of exposition about which of the strategies is really providing the most bang for the buck. And then in every 5 years, we'll be back where we are now, reassessing and adjusting our goals and objectives, considering new performance measures and strategies, and then also setting new targets. And that is all I have for you today, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Thank you. Any questions for the board members? I see none here. Are there any virtual board members who have any raised hands, like to ask staff?
Mr. Delari, we haven't received any voice comments on the phone line. We have received one electronic comment card from Ben Smith. So,
Could you read it, please?
we're going to see if he wants to raise his virtual hand. He's with us. Comment. But it appears he's not with us. There's no raised hands as well.
Excuse me?
There's no raised hands.
Okay. Were you able to read the comment card?
Okay. Okay, there was no comment on it.
Okay, thank you. Always good to check. I just have one quick question, and I'm okay if it's not being answered today.
Okay.
On your reliability chart or slide that you had, there was a heat map, and the heat map basically showed the reliability issues along I-4, which I understand. I just want to make sure the reliability issues were not due to the construction of I-4, and because that would be understandable. So if that is, please put an asterisk there somewhere noting that I-4 is under major reconstruction. So that's my only comment.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Delari.
Now move on to public comments for general items. Do we have any general written cards here? Gary?
No, we do not.
Do we have any virtual written cards for comments? Do we have any hands raised for general comments from the public?
No.
There are none. There are none.
Okay, there are none. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Are there any comments from our board members here physically? Seeing none. Are there any comments from the board virtually? We have your raised hands. Do you have any raised hands from virtual board members?
We do not,
No comment.
Chairman. No raised hands.
Thank you. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, December the 9th at 9 a.m. We anticipate that the board meeting will be, again, a hybrid, just like this was. It's critical that we have a quorum physically present during the December meeting so we can adopt the MetroPlan transportation plan. This will also be our annual meeting to elect officers for 2021. Seeing no further comments, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.